Welcome to Distress to Joyful, Bailey's Way. I'm your host, Bailey Raber, here to enlighten you and the rest of the world about one of the most misunderstood mental health disorders out there, bipolar disorder. In each episode, we'll learn more about my personal journey with bipolar 2 disorder, how I've struggled with it, and how I've learned to overcome those struggles. Together, we'll laugh, we'll cry, and most importantly, we'll have fun. You'll leave each episode feeling hopeful and stocked full of useful information on how you can better yourself and the world around you. Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode. This one is really exciting. I'm excited for it. I hope you are too. But real quick, in terms of announcements, so I have finally started blogging about my recent wedding in India. So as an American attending an Indian wedding as a bride, I had a lot to learn ahead of time to get myself prepared and prepped for all the things that were going into the wedding. But I also have a very unique perspective of the experience because I didn't grow up attending these incredible events. So that said, I'm going to keep this short, but if you're interested in learning more about Indian weddings or you just want to see some photos of mine, I'm going to have the links to these articles. I've written 2.5 so far. 2 that are published, 1 more that's on the way. So those links are going to be in this episode's show notes, but you can also just head on over to whatisheybales.com/the blog, and you can find it there too. So I have a little self-reflection corner for today, which is why I kept announcements super short. I'm going to try not to go super long with today's episode in general. But something that I have struggled with my entire life is perfectionism. And you know what? This is something that I've learned to let go of. Granted, I have my moments where perfectionism will still fuck me up. But for the most part, I have learned how to not let it control my life and not, take over all the things, overthinking, anything like that. So before I kind of stem into all of that, let me just kind of explain what perfectionism is, just in case anybody listening right now isn't aware. But perfectionism is basically you have this notion that everything has to be perfect. And to be perfect means that this thing on the wall is crooked. So you're going to go up and fix it, even though it's not your house, it's somebody else's house. Or you finish a project, let's say for class, I'm finishing something I have to sew for school, and then I undo and redo the same seam 5 times because it wasn't perfect. So I just kept doing it over and over until I finally got it perfect. Another way that I personally have struggled with perfectionism is with the way that I look. That's been a huge, huge, huge problem for me. And I have finally come to terms with these issues. Where they stem from, unfortunately, is from my mom. So she fucking struggles with perfectionism. I mean, I'm hoping things have changed. I haven't spoken with her in 4 years now, so maybe she's gotten better. But I remember growing up, y'all, if my tag was out in the back of my shirt, she would come up and she would flip it inside for me. I did not ask you to do that. I don't want you in my personal space, but it was bothering her, so she had to fix it. Or if something was the coasters were out of place on the table, she would move them, and literally she was always fixing things. And so as a kid, when you see your mom doing that, it turns into something that you start doing just out of habit. I mean, you learn from your parents. So if your parents are doing healthy things and they're engaging in life healthily, you're going to probably learn to be very healthy, and you're going to have a healthy childhood and a healthy life, like my husband Monish. His parents were phenomenal in how they raised him and how they just taught him how to be his own person and how to think for himself and how to just be the good human that he is. And then my parents, so while it's not their fault, their bad habits were learned by other people who taught their parents and so on and so forth. It's generational problems that trickle down. So for me, recognizing that perfectionism was a problem, that actually started in 2019 is when I actually recognized the issue, because I had lost a bunch of weight and I still wasn't happy with how I was looking. Like, it still wasn't perfect. I had this little, like a little stomach pooch. I definitely have that now. I've gained some of that weight back. Y'all, I got down to 135 pounds. That was the smallest I've probably ever been. Definitely the leanest. I was actually, like, my body composition, my muscle mass to my body fat and all that shit, the technical stuff, was athlete level. I was at that and I still wasn't happy with my body. That is a problem. Like, that is a fucking problem. That's perfectionism clouding your brain, making you think that you are not good enough when you fucking are. You are good enough just the way that you are. You are. So what actually helped me like overcome a lot of these issues was one of Brene Brown's books. And I definitely should have figured out which one it was. Oh, The Gifts of Imperfection. Ooh, look at me remembering that. Oh, I'm so happy. The Gifts of Imperfection is the book of hers that I read that literally helped me overcome these issues. And I'll never forget, because I remember reading a chapter about messes. And I think what she had talked about was like making food in the kitchen. Like, I think she was making brownies with her daughter. Don't quote me on that. I think that's what was happening. Read the book yourself and find out. But she was making brownies with her kid in the kitchen, and they're making a mess. And she wanted to just like clean it all up instantly. But they were having fun, and they were having a good time, and they were bonding together, like mother-daughter bonding. So she could either let her perfectionism decide that they need to clean this mess up now, or she could sit back and just enjoy the moment, because we can clean the mess up later. It doesn't have to be cleaned up right now. So I literally started making messes and then cleaning them up afterwards. God, excuse me. But that's kind of how it helped me to like get over some of these perfectionism things. It's like, you know what? It doesn't have to be perfect. As long as it's good enough for me, then that's fine. Granted, I still struggle with this, but I have done so much better because I remind myself, I'm not perfect. I'm good the way that I am. I do this when I look in the mirror, and like yesterday, for instance, I was wearing a skirt and I had a little bit of like, what do you want to call this? A jelly roll? I don't know. I had a little fat hanging over the top of my skirt, and I looked at it in the mirror and I'm like, oh, I really hate this. And my husband looked at me and he goes, embrace it. He's like, this is your body. You are beautiful as you are. Embrace it. And I was like, you know what? You're fucking right. I am beautiful the way that I am. And yeah, there's a little bit of fat hanging over my skirt. So what? Who doesn't have a little fat on their body these days? You really should have a little fat on your body. So yeah, I just wanted to share this as part of the self-reflection corner this week, because I know that perfectionism is definitely a problem with others. I've run into plenty of friends who have had these issues too, but it's something that you can overcome. So if any of you guys are struggling with perfectionism currently, I really, really, really strongly recommend that you read The Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown. That is what literally set me on the path to overcome most of these problems. Again, it's a battle. I still struggle too, but I don't struggle like I used to. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into today's episode, How to Manage Bipolar Disorder, Bailey's Way. So I'm going to start by reviewing what my research has found, and then I'm going to go into details on what I do specifically to manage my own bipolar disorder. So I'm doing this because I think it's important for y'all to hear what medical professionals are recommending, as well as what I do for me and why these things work for me. Because remember, what works for me might not always work for you, but if you hear what I do and the things that have helped me, it might give you some ideas or inspire you to try a couple new things on your own, or to just switch things up, or whatever you need to do, because we're all different. We all experience life differently. Sharing is caring, y'all. Sharing is caring. Okay, so I'm going to start by sharing what I found on mind.org.uk in an article titled Self-Management for Bipolar Disorder. So they list a couple different things. I'm going to go over them and then go into details about what they say. So most of this is quoted verbatim. Some of this I have kind of mixed in my own stuff. But again, the link to this article is in this episode's show notes. So go check it out if you want some more details. But the first thing that they mentioned is get to know your moods. So keep track of your moods daily by either jotting them down in a journal or in the notes on your phone. If you have an iPhone, they have a new diary app, which actually has a lock, which is really cool. Like you can set a different pin to it. So like, let's say like my husband knows the pin to my phone. He can unlock my phone. I know his, I can unlock his. But let's say for some reason, I didn't want him to look into this like diary app on my iPhone. I could set a different pin. Now, that would never, ever be the case. But like that's something in case you guys like share pins with your family members or something like that, like your passcode. I don't know why I'm calling it pins, a passcode. You can do this for this diary app on the iPhone now. So that's really nifty. So real quick, I am going to jot in a little bit of personal on this note. In terms of getting to know your moods, my therapist is actually having me do this right now. So a week ago in our last session, was it a week ago? It might have been the week before. It was the week before. It's 2 weeks ago now. She asked me to start jotting down every day, like the moods, like the big moods I can remember that I experienced the most throughout the day. And I'm doing this so that we can both collectively look over all the data and see if there's a pattern of any sort. So she's also having me write down when I have my period as well, because that will affect my moods as a woman who gets a period. So that's something to keep in mind also. But having this data, you guys, is so valuable because you can watch for patterns with things. I'm actually going to try to do it for a whole year. I'll keep you updated if that is still going on. But the next thing that they mention to help manage bipolar disorder is to stick to a routine. They say having a routine can help you feel more calm if your mood is high, more motivated if your mood is low, and just generally more stable. So a routine should include taking your daily meds, specific time for meals, such as like breakfast at 7, lunch at 12, like whatever, time for activities or hobbies that bring you joy, and a set bedtime. Managing your stress. So stress can trigger mood episodes. So finding daily activities that help relieve stress for you is going to be helpful overall. And stress relief can come in many different forms. We will talk about a little bit. We will talk more about that here in a little bit. I'm just going to go over a lot of the main details with them, and then I'll get more into me. I'm trying real hard not to get too personal right now, but this is tough. Manage your finances. I thought that was very interesting that was on the list, but it makes sense because this kind of goes hand in hand with managing your stress. Finances are usually a very big stressor for most people. So if you're having difficulties with your finances, you're probably going to be stressed out, which then that's like a trickle effect, like a domino effect of just like all the bad shit that could just pile up and cause problems. So, side note, if you haven't already, I recommend you tune into Season 2, Episode 12, Manic Spending Sprees, so that you can learn a little bit more about my own personal struggles with finances and how I was able to get them under control. So I get real vulnerable with that if you haven't tuned in yet. Again, the link to that will be in today's show notes, or you can just search it on your listening platform that you're on right now. Another one that they say is to look after your physical health. So this includes getting sufficient sleep, eating healthy, and exercising. Build a good support network. This one I really like a lot. So I'm going to read verbatim from the article. It states, building a support network could help to manage your mood. This might include friends, family, or other people in your life who you trust and can talk to. The kind of support they can offer includes being able to recognize signs that you may be experiencing a mood episode, helping you look after yourself by keeping a routine or a healthy diet, just holding you accountable, listening and offering their understanding, and helping you reflect on and remember what happened during a manic or a hypomanic episode. So in addition to these, I also found an additional article on psychom.net titled 6 Tips to Live Better with Bipolar Disorder that offers a few additional tips. So they did have some of the same ones, which was not at all surprising, but this one had a few others that I really loved. So the first one that I'm going to point out from them is stay connected. And guys, this one, I think that staying connected is a little bit different than building a good support system. So building the support system, that's the first step, is having relationships with friends and family and people you can count on and trust and talk to when you're going through some shit and you just need someone to be there for you. That is important. But you also should not just be reaching out to them when you are feeling like shit. You need to be actively engaging in this relationship. I think that where I struggle with that is I feel like sometimes when I do start to feel like shit, I don't reach out to people because I don't want to bother them. So personally, I think I need to do a better job of openly communicating with some of my friends and being like, hey, I love you. I trust you. You know, I have bipolar disorder. You know how this can affect me sometimes. How do you feel about me calling if I'm down or upset or I need someone to talk to? I think I really need to open that line of communication because I stay connected with my friends for the most part on a pretty regular basis, but I do struggle with feeling like a burden. But staying connected, most specifically, the reason why they say this is because if you are not having regular communication with people who matter to you, people who lift you up, who bring you joy, you might start to slip into a life of solidarity. And a life of solidarity can cause depression to creep on up. It can cause a lot of things. Guys, loneliness is a killer in the United States. That is a killer of people, is loneliness. It's wild. That's bad. So when I sometimes will get really bad about not connecting with people when I'm feeling depressed, and my therapist, she's actually called that, she says that I'm reclusing. That's the term she uses. And so the Merriam-Webster dictionary defines a recluse as a person who lives a solitary life and tends to avoid other people. And that is what I do when I start to feel depressed. I usually start to avoid people, which is a really bad habit that I need to break. So it's a good thing. We're both learning today, aren't we? So another thing this article mentions is to educate yourself. And you know what? Congratulations. If you're listening to this podcast right now, then you're already doing this. But please don't stop here. Seriously, check out additional episodes that I've released, as well as the show notes. The show notes are full of all the articles, guys. Anytime I quote an article, they are in the show notes because I want you to go and I want you to read more. I usually take bits and pieces of things, like both of these articles today. I just took bits and pieces. But do yourself a favor, go to the show notes and go read both of these articles in full to get a better understanding for yourself. That is how you can help yourself, by educating yourself just a little bit more. Still come to me, but just take it a step further. And then another thing that they mentioned in this article that I really, really liked is engage coping skills. So this is also something I'm not super great at, which I need to work on. Let me add that to my never-ending need to work on list. But I remembered one that my therapist has given me a couple of these, right? She's given me a couple different coping skills. And what these are they're things that you can do in the moment when you're experiencing some kind of distress or anger or you're anxious, things like this, when your emotions are starting to get heightened. You can employ some of these methods to help kind of center yourself, bring you back down, level you out. And the one that I remembered the most is the 5-4-3-2-1 technique. So this is a grounding exercise that you could just do in your head. For me, I've done it when I've been super anxious or angry. I've definitely used this before when I was very angry, especially when I was working in customer service. But how this one goes is you list out 5 things that you can see, 4 that you feel, 3 that you hear, 2 that you smell, and 1 that you taste, which that last one is often really, really hard, which is probably why it's just 1. But I'll do it with you real fast for an example. So 5 things that I see. I see the couch pillow. I see my laptop sitting right in front of me. I see my water bottle sitting behind my laptop. I see my dog's ball on the floor, like his toy. And I see my backpack sitting on the chair right there. So that's 5 things I see. 4 things that I feel. I feel these headphones on my ears. I feel the seat of this chair under my butt. I feel the ring on my finger. And I feel this microphone in my hand. So if you are on YouTube right now, then you saw all those things I feel. 3 things that I hear. Man, I just really messed up because I'm wearing noise cancellation headphones. So I'm going to make some up. I hear a car alarm, I hear a ambulance, and I hear my dog barking. There we go. 3 things. 2 that I smell. Again, that's really hard right now. There's nothing in here I can smell. So I'll just say that I can smell dinner cooking on the stove, and I can smell the air freshener that goes off every 30 minutes. And then there's nothing that I can taste right now. But what that does, guys, that just took like 2 minutes of my time, and it shifted my focus from whatever I was thinking about previously, which was this conversation, and it put me in the present moment. And it made me think, okay, let's look at what's going on here. What's actually happening in front of me right now? And this is especially helpful for anxiety, which is why I need to remember to do this more often. Because when you're anxious, you're usually worried about something. And when you're worried about something, 9 out of 10 times, it is out of your fucking control, or it's in the future, or it's something that already happened, or. There's just so many possibilities of it being nothing that's happening right here and right now. That's where anxiety gets you. So this here makes you focus on the here and now, which really, really helps. I know this helps. I've done it before, and it has helped me before. I've just obviously been out of practice. So it's a good thing I'm doing this with y'all, because I got some new reminders for myself now. Okay, so let's talk about what I do specifically to help manage my bipolar disorder. And before I go into all of these details, I want to just throw out there that I am a human and I am not perfect. And I still, to this day, even though I have been working so hard for the last 6 years on managing my bipolar disorder, I still sometimes struggle with doing the things that I need to do to help me stay balanced and more better. I do. And so I want to throw that out there right now, because I don't want you guys to think that I'm doing all this shit every day and everything's always great and every day is always great, because that is not the case. That probably will never be the case. I don't think I'm ever going to be able to do all of these things perfectly and have just like a good day every day. I don't think anybody can do that, bipolar or no bipolar. So just keep that in mind, that we are doing progress, not perfection here. And every day is a new day, and it's a new chance to start fresh and new. That's redundant, but yeah. So I try my absolute best to do what I call the big 3, which is to exercise daily, to eat healthy meals every day, and to get sufficient sleep. So to get sufficient sleep, guys, I've mentioned this before. I'm going to mention it again now. I have a bedtime routine. I am very, very strict about it for the most part. There are some nights when I'm really bad, when I'm just like not in a good mood and I'm like, fuck it. But for the most part, I'm very, very strict about my bedtime routine, because sleep is really important to me. I have learned the hard way recently, like in India, when I was not getting enough sleep sometimes because we had too much going on, and it destroyed me. So I really need my sleep. So I have an article titled "The Bedtime Routine That Regulates My Sleep," which I am going to share in the show notes today. If you want to check it out, I highly recommend you just take a look. I talk about my bedtime routine and also kind of give some tips to help you figure out how to start one for yourself, because sleep is so important. Oh, boom. And then the next one is sticking to a routine. So I just mentioned bedtime routine. That's something that I'm really good at sticking with for the most part. But what I need to work on right now, and I'm currently working on, is my morning routine, because that got all out of whack since returning from the recent 6-week trip to India. But that is something too, guys. A routine doesn't just have to be at bedtime. A routine could be your morning routine. It could be your routine throughout the day at work. It doesn't really matter. There's no set. It could be your after work routine. Just something where there's consistency every single day to keep things leveled out. Because y'all, when I worked as a server full time, my schedule was insane. It was all over the place. I never really knew what was happening. The week before is when I found out when I was working. I could not really establish a routine. And my life is drastically different from back then to now, because now I've been able to do that. I have, a 9-to-5 job where I'm working throughout the day. And so I have been able to work routines around that, which I did not realize how important it was until I got it. So if you have a stable job, like one that you know exactly when you're working every single week and it rarely changes, I really encourage you to work on some kind of morning or evening routine to add to that, just for more stability. It's really helpful, I'm telling you. So tracking my moods, I mentioned this one earlier, but right now I am like, oh man, I just really want to know the data. So I've kept up with it for 2 weeks. So let's hope I keep going. But I do want this data to be able to help figure out if there's any trends with my moods. That's something I really, really want to know, just to help keep me balanced in the future. Take my daily meds as prescribed. So this one really should have been listed first because it is super important. But I will say that I'm kind of shocked that it didn't really mention this in either of those articles that I quoted earlier. I don't remember seeing anything about daily meds. So this is something that, guys, if you are seeing a psychiatrist regularly and they prescribe you meds, take them as directed. Do what your doctor says. It is so important. Trust me, I've learned this the hard way. Please do as they say. Staying connected with my support network. So this one, guys, building a support network. I'm not sure if I mentioned this earlier, but building that, it takes work. So relationships are a two-way street. That is something that I just want to remind everybody, that friendships are a two-way street. Romantic relationships are a two-way street. Family relationships are a two-way street. It takes effort. So do yourself a favor and work on cultivating stronger relationships with the people that you already have in your life that already bring you joy or encourage and support you already. Work on connecting with them more often, even just a text, guys, once a week, twice a week, checking in on them. So that way, when you do need them, it's a two-way street. You're checking in on them. So when you go to them, I feel like that's self-explanatory, but yeah, like check in on your friends. They'll start to check in on you. If they're not checking on you, that's another problem. But yeah, it is super important to stay connected with people and to continue working on these relationships. And the last one I'm going to mention is going to therapy regularly. So this one, I was actually shocked that it was not mentioned in either of the articles either. Like, what's going on here? But then again, therapy is unfortunately not always available for everybody because it's not cheap. But if you can afford to see a therapist, I seriously recommend it. I've been seeing my therapist for 12 years now. 12 fucking years. And she has helped me in so many ways. I can't even tell you guys how much she has helped me. Seeing a therapist is kind of like educating yourself, like I mentioned earlier, but this is a curated version because your therapist will recommend things that you should do, that you should read, that you should watch, that you should listen to, etc., based upon you and your current life situations. So the Brene Brown book that I mentioned earlier, The Gifts of Imperfection, oh, guess who recommended that? My therapist. That's who. Surprise. She has recommended so many things that have been so fucking helpful. And this is stuff that I would not have even thought to like Google, y'all. I wouldn't even thought to Google this. So that's why if you can work it into your budget, even if it's just once a month, guys, it's so helpful. It's really, really helpful. She has helped me navigate so many things, and I could go on and on and on. But again, trying not to go too long for you guys. I'm trying to keep these a little shorter these days. But before we finish up, I do want to end on this note for y'all. So if you're not currently doing any of the activities mentioned throughout this entire episode to help manage your bipolar disorder, do not panic. Let me remind you, there was a time in my life when I wasn't doing any of these things either. I was doing none of this shit. So if you're just starting out, I recommend that you pick one thing to start with. So it's either something that your psychiatrist or your therapist recommends, or just one of these things that you think will be the easiest to implement, that you think is going to be beneficial for your life, and spend the next 30 days focusing on that one task. Once you get that down, add another one and work on both of those for 30 days. And then add another one, and so on and so forth. The reason being is trying to start a whole bunch of shit at once almost never works out. I have learned that the hard way so many times in my life. It is overwhelming to try to start an exercise routine, a meal plan, and eating healthy, taking my meds every single day, going on like walks, reading books before bed. It is a lot to try to do everything all at once. And more often than not, when you do that, you are setting yourself up for failure. So I remember learning from my Bible school teacher decades ago, Miss Joanne, that she had always told us that starting a new habit, it takes 30 days. It takes 30 days to build a new habit. This is correct. She was always right. Shocker. So that's why I'm saying pick one, whichever one will be the easiest, and focus on that and try to accomplish that one task every day for 30 days. So I actually made what I call the Healthy Habit Guide and Tracker that I will link in today's show notes that can help you track these things. I had a friend a couple years ago who was trying to lose weight, and she was trying to do too many things at once. And I told her, just like I'm telling you now, pick one and focus on it. And so I actually made a tracker for her to help her kind of keep up with things. And I've actually used it for myself too, but it's available on my blog. So I'm going to link that in today's show notes for you guys. If any of you guys need a little bit of help, a little motivation, something to pin up on your wall and check off, because we all like checking off things. I do. I don't know about you, but I definitely like to check off tasks. And lastly, guys, please remember that change doesn't happen overnight. It's okay if you screwed up today. Tomorrow is a brand new chance for you to try again. Win of the week. Win of the week. Okay, win of the week. So this segment was created for you guys, and this is just a way for us to come together and spread some positivity and share some good things that have happened in our lives. So I am going to share a win of the week for me today, and that is that yesterday I got to see my friend Corey for the first time in like a year and a half. Way too long. It has been way too long. He happened to plan a trip up here. He doesn't live in Houston anymore. He lives in a neighboring city an hour away. So he drove up with some of his friends, and I got to go meet up with him and his now fiance, which I didn't know about. Rude. Anyways, it was so good to get to see him and get to catch up a little bit and just reminisce on how we both have grown. So I met Corey when I was a server full time, and so was he. And y'all, we were both the Hot Mess Express. Like, our lives were a fucking shit show. Both of us. We were both struggling so hard back then. And it is just so beautiful to get together with him and to be like, wow, like, look at us now. Look at us now. We are completely different people. We have changed and we have grown, and our lives have become the beauty that we had always imagined that we wanted them to be. And like, we made it possible. Like, holy shit. So that, guys, if you have a friend that you have been through hard times with and you're, both out of it, cherish that. That is such a beautiful thing for you guys to get to sit down and be like, damn, we got ourselves out of that hell and into the beautiful lives we have today. Like, I love it. It was so good. So if you have a recent win that you want to share with me, you can send in your submissions by heading over to whatisheybellsdoing.com/win of the week. You can also just DM me on Instagram at distressed_undescore_Baileysway, or send an email at whatisheybellsdoing@gmail.com. This is your chance for a shout out on the show, so please send them in. So in the next episode, we're going to discuss how to cope with losing friends. So everybody comes into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. I've heard that so many times throughout my life. I firmly agree with it. And unfortunately, a lot of my friends over the last couple of years have entered into my life for a reason and a season, not a lifetime. So some of this was because of me. Other times it was all on them. But regardless of how these friends were lost, it still sucks. Y'all, it can sometimes even feel as bad as like a romantic breakup. I have grieved some friendships, which, that said, I'm going to dive into all of this in the next episode and talk about what has helped me cope with both choosing to end a friendship that was no longer serving me, as well as how I've coped with a friend choosing no longer to want to have a relationship with me. Both of the ways. So be sure to tune into that. It's going to be some good stuff. I know that I'm not the only one who has dealt with the loss of friends. This world is crazy that we live in these days. But until next time, take it easy, stay grateful, and be joyful. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Distressed to Joyful Bailey's Way. Head on over to whatisheybellsdoing.com to find the resources mentioned throughout this episode. Be sure to follow the show on Instagram at distressed_to_Baileys Way and on Facebook at Distressed to Joyful Baileys Way. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating on your favorite podcast listening platform or write a review on Audible or Apple Podcasts. Lastly, don't forget to hit the subscribe button to stay up to date with new episode releases. Until next time, take it easy, stay grateful, and be joyful. Bye!